Welcome, I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, and today in the latest of my deep dive videos I'm going to explore the journey of the assertive, action oriented but also feisty energies of Mars through the feeling sign of Cancer. This takes place in two phases and it's going to go across 23 weeks in total. Phase 1 begins on the 4th of September through to the 4th of November. Due to the retrograde in Leo on the 6th of December, it is retrograde through till the 24th of February, but inverts back into the sign of Cancer on the 6th of January. And it won't be until the 18th of April that Mars returns to Leo. What does this mean for us all collectively? And I'm going to unpack what it means for each of the 12 zodiac signs, from Aries through to Pisces, from the perspective of the ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new to my channel, it's lovely to have your company. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please feel very welcome to share them. If you're a returning visitor, your views and interactions, as ever, are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so and click or tap the bell notification symbol and help the channel to thrive. I'd just like to say I am a consultant astrologer. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, please check out my testimonials below. Also, if you'd like to take advantage of my year 2025 special package, you can order your forecast now, get the rest of this year free, but also get 30% off and also your life roadmap report. Totally unique to each person they are produced for. They will give you searing insights. They're great value. Please see below for more. Also, I'd like to briefly tell you about a very exciting relationship app. It's called Matchful.me. Relationships aren't just about romance. We all have them. If you'd like to understand how you connect through the medium of astrology, Matchful can help you to do so. It's based on Western tropical astrology, not sun signs, but also deep psychological profiling. Please see the link below to find out more. Let's just first of all explore the archetypes of Mars. Mars rules two zodiac signs. The first is Aries, so it's very much about initiation. It's about where we get that instinct to go for something and we don't think about it too long. We get that impulse and that propels us forwards in a very meaningful and action orientated way. It's very much linked to the ascendant. If we think what the ascendant is in your natal chart, that's really the energy of Mars. It can be a little bit naive at times. It will pile into situations, not necessarily weighing things up, just listening to those instincts. But it's exciting, it's fresh. And it is also perhaps linked to our egos too. But its rulership of the sign of Scorpio is much more complex. Here it's very much about the need for gratification, to come up against challenges, to transform ourselves through those challenges. Can be about our attitude to long-term finances, shared resources, but also intimacy, and if we want to put it bluntly, sex too. But what about the host Cancer? Cancer is the fourth zodiac sign, but it is a cardinal sign just like Aries, which means it too is about executive influence. It is about authority. Therefore, Cancer, and the point that Mars moves into on the 4th of September, the Earth point, is a very influential degree. And the action here is about protectiveness, particularly around our home, family and emotions. But people who have Mars in their natal charts can be quite prickly, a little bit up and down in their moods, sometimes even perhaps a bit defensive. But it is also an opportunity to use the action-orientated energies of Mars to get things done around the home. So if there is a do-it-yourself task, that you've been putting off, or you've been waiting to get a contractor in, or you want to move home completely, or you want to add to your family, or you want to decorate, or you want to take the first steps towards getting a family reunion together, Mars in this sign is going to give you a lot of propulsion. But there can be some chaffing because Mars can be so impatient, and the fourth house is quite reactive for Mars to be in. So it's going to be important to make sure that we're using the energy of Mars in a way which improves our immediate environment. But what about the chart that's forged when Mars moves into Cancer? Because it is very revealing. This natal chart, the seed chart, is going to provide a background influence throughout the whole 23 weeks of this very extended transit. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart. It's based on universal time and Greenwich because of the prime meridian. You can see that the ascendant, ironically, is 25 degrees and 16 minutes in Aries. But it means Mars is in the third house, which is really interesting because the third house, or the sign of Gemini, which is very much redolent of the third house, is where Mars has been for the last 6 weeks. And that's about quick actions in terms of our physical interactions, moving around a lot, perhaps being more physically active, but also exercising our minds more, or perhaps exercising our points of view, because Mars in Gemini is certainly up for a discussion. But of course, as Mars came to the end of its journey through the sign of Gemini, it did square with Neptune. And as we go into this new 23-week period, the two are still squaring up. So the potential, particularly with Mars in house 3, which is about quick communication, but the host is very much about those emotions, suggests that the need to articulate ourselves is very strong still, but it can come from a more unconscious, perhaps even more automatic viewpoint triggered by the deeper part of our feelings. And it is still square Neptune. So you can see Neptune up in house 12. So the potential for confusion is still very strong. But I want you to look at the position of the moon, because the moon is actually broadly opposite, apart from a degree or two, to Neptune. So Mars becomes a T-square between the two. So it's a trigger point, really. And the moon's in the 6th house in the sign of Libra, very much about trying to find balance and equilibrium, perhaps giving in a little bit, but the 6th house is where we want to be productive, efficient, and make some changes to our domestic or worldly situation to make it run that much more smoothly. But with the moon opposite Neptune, that can create some distortion and uncertainty, which means that over the next few weeks, over those next 23 weeks, there are going to be times when people will adopt quite feisty and hostile positions based on perhaps what they're not conscious of, and that can be true of all of us. What we can do is try to embrace that Libran energy, even though there is a chaffing with the moon and Mars, which in itself is an aspect which can make people quite irritable, perhaps changeable. We need to just be mindful of that Libran energy to try to soothe things down, and therefore not be so reactive. So Mars in Cancer, brilliant for getting all those chores and upgrades done in the domestic abode or moving completely. But we need to slow things down and evaluate all the different sides of a situation. Otherwise, we could be using the feist, the fire, and the aggression even of Mars in a very reflex, reactionary way, which is not to our best advantage, because Neptune's creating a misty uncertainty. So the more we can just consider our positions, particularly around family and property matters, the better it's going to be. I'm now going to share with you on the screen the solar chart, which does give us a slightly different perspective. Now we can all relate to the solar chart because Mars goes into 4, very much in keeping with the sign of Cancer. The Moon moves into 7, very much in keeping with Libra, and Neptune, very much in keeping with Pisces, is in the mysterious 12th, which, to be fair, it is in the natal chart too. So this gives us the picture. The 4th house. What is it that's not quite working around your emotional life, family, or home situation at the moment? Because that may be what you're driven to change through those next 23 weeks. But let's just consider the archetypes, because once we get to the 4th of November and the degree is the anaretic degree in Cancer, and we're preparing for Mars to move into Leo, which, to be honest, it loves being in Leo because it rules the 3rd decan of that sign. We are going to see Mars go opposite Pluto, and that could be an ignition point for some serious issues. In fact, I'm going to tell you that at the turn of the year, Mars and Pluto are going to be in an opposition, which can make people extremely forceful, determined to get their own way, a kind of might is right energy. But you know, when this event begins, Pluto is also very influential. It's just in a more subtle angle to Mars. It's in a quincunx. So you can see Pluto just back in the sign of Capricorn, is in house 10 in the solar chart, relating to house 4. But essentially, we could consider Pluto being on that 11th house cusp, which is us collectively. So I feel that there is going to be some uncertainty about our situations. And one of the things that people are very mindful of is the cost of accommodation. So we are going to see some very strident discussions about that. Not that we haven't already, but there's going to be more outpourings of feelings, which of course is what Cancer's about. But Mars in Cancer, as I mentioned before, can be very reactive. So what can start off as being a relatively steady conversation can soon ignite. So think of the passion of Mars, particularly for its rulership of Aries, in that watery, misty energy, the feeling energy of Cancer, which can be quite reserved in order to protect its sense of security, and then suddenly the crab can run forwards and nip its opponent very, very hard. So we can expect some challenges throughout this 23-week period, and the biggest challenge of all, I feel, is to work on balancing our frustration and perhaps our irritation that things aren't moving quite as quickly as we would like, or if people don't quite get our meaning, or if we don't feel heard. We can be much more inclined to express those feelings in a more voluble and even forceful way. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect over this entire period. So Aries, through the next 23 weeks of the next 32 in total, Mars moving through your 4th house is going to require some care and delicacy, particularly from the 6th of January through to the 24th of February, because during that period Mars is in retrograde, but in the sign of Cancer. It's going to get back to 17 degrees. And that's the part of the year when we're often trying to initiate new plans and new projects, get on the front foot and see through any New Year's resolutions. But if your hopes are to make some changes, physical changes to where you live, Mars here for sure can be a real asset. But what about the politics of your emotional life? Because that can be a quite complex area of most people's situations, whether it is in terms of our inner feelings, our relationship with ourselves, or our connections to loved ones, be it blood family or extended family. So it is important to understand that there may be some frustrations. And because Saturn and Neptune are still locked into, through this process, your 12th house, the more subconscious side of your nature is really part of the mix already. So that can feed into how you show your feelings, and you could show your feelings with a sense of frustration at times. particularly if someone around you seems to be blocking you or not opening up. You may encounter someone who's a bit moody or a bit resistant to saying clearly how they feel, which is something that actually you may really not find easy, because for you, better to have the issue out in the open, discuss it, and even if there is some emotion that's shown, at least it clarifies the situation, it ventilates things, and people can say how they feel and move on. But you just could encounter someone who's very typically sort of a little bit defended, not prepared to open up quite as much as you would like, and that may be something that can really challenge you. So what about the period when Mars moves through Leo? Well, certainly from the 4th of November through to the 6th of January, there is an opportunity there, of course, to be sociable, certainly to showcase the more glamorous part of your nature. But with Mars going retrograde from the 6th of December, anything to do with your romantic situation or your social affairs could be affected in the run-up to Christmas, and that can all feed into how you feel about things. So Taurus, pop astrology seems to perpetuate the idea that you can be very stubborn, dig your heels in, and almost be immovable over points of principle. Now, I'm sure there are times when something comes up for you like that, but the chances are over the next 23 weeks of the next 32, if you do feel strongly about something, you are going to stand in your power much more assertively. But what's wrong with that? The host of Mars is Cancer, which is all about our feelings. But for you, it's the 3rd house, which can be quick communications. Mars, of course, can be fiery. So if you feel something is unfair, the chances are you're going to articulate it in a very direct way. Good for you, particularly when it comes to your friendships, because I feel that that area of life or your long-term plan may have seemed a little bit frustrating of late. Something that was on track has slowed down, and also because Neptune's been squaring with Mars and is, as you go into this transition, you may have felt that some of your hopes were just drifting and draining away. But that's where you can use Mars in Cancer to your advantage, to fire up your sense of conviction, that sense of purpose. Now you can do that around your ideas, but also it's a great opportunity to get more active. So if you are wanting to just up the cardio and do some more intense exercise, this transit will absolutely be perfect for you. But also it could give you a determination to improve your mode of transport. But Mars can be an influence which sees us quite impatient, and I wouldn't rush to get that ideal car or other mode of movement, because that actually could be a more emotional decision, which of course is Cancer. So there's a great opportunity to use this to your advantage, but if you are trying to select that new model, just take your time, because then you can appraise everything just so. But when it comes to your interaction with people immediately around you, whether it's neighbours, siblings, your community, the chances are you are going to have more contact. But there could also be some sparks within that contact. But actually, do you know, that's going to make you feel really alive, so why not? So Gemini, the last 6 weeks as Mars has been racing through your sign, it has been priming you up to focus on what's really important for you, the individual. You may have been more single-minded, but because of the angles that Mars has been forging to other players, not least Saturn, not least Neptune, which is still in place, and also Venus, which is still broadly in effect too. It hasn't all been going at quite the pace you would like. But also your professional and worldly interactions have been muted by Saturn since March 2023. If you have had successes and breakthroughs, you've probably really had to grind them out. All of which now can see you much more focused on what you can actually produce that's more tangible. So if you have been initiating a new hobby, interest, relationship, or trying to make progress with an idea you have, the next 23 weeks give you an opportunity to see if you can then transform this into something more foundational that gives you the platform to really move forward. So if your focus is, for example, around finances, the determination to improve your lot is going to be incredible during that period of time. But it also points towards the fact that not everything may go quite as quickly as you would like, and you may encounter some people whose values are very different to yours, and that can create an emotional dimension because the host is Cancer. So if you see finances or point of principle differently to someone else, that could be an ignition point. But in your own situation, it's about converting those recent initiating efforts into something more tangible and lasting. So Cancer, the last 6 weeks for you have probably been quite trying at times. Your physical vitality may have been really quite low, your motivation equally so. You may have found yourself trying to process some very painful memories and upsets from the past. What Mars in the 12th house can do is also flag up people who aren't necessarily our best friends. And these people may have in some ways impacted on your situation in a very psychological way, which has made you feel very isolated and perhaps even a little depressed. But Mars moving into your sign is a fabulous opportunity for you to regain your drive and determination and take a firmer grip on your life direction. So if you have experienced the sense of drift, or your feelings have been quite turbulent, perhaps at times uncharacteristically angry and at others tearful, now you can move into the moment, and through to the 18th of April next year, the window of opportunity, even when Mars moves into Leo, is enormous for you. But key to this is you need to have a plan, or you need to have a project where you want to invest thrust, because the more you're single-minded and focus on what's right for you, the better you will do. But that part of you that can avoid outright conflict, that's something that could change during this period of time. You can be much more to the point and stand up for what you believe in. And that can be a surprise to certain people. And if anyone has been opposing you, because the 12th house is the sector in traditional astrology of secret enemies, if you have become much more conscious of who's not in your corner, that reality, even if it has been painful, is something that you can now hold but work towards by demonstrating to people just how determined, focused and dynamic that you can truly be. So Leo, astrology is very much about cycles of time, but also of influence. Mars in your 12th house, as it will be through to the 4th of November, and then from the 6th of January through to the 18th of April, can be quite tricky, to be honest. And that's because the 12th house is where we can get much more in touch with our psychological sphere, but Mars is much more about actualizing our individuality. If you are someone who really is keen to move forwards at pace, you may find yourself having to go back over some old ground. It's also possible to be really truthful that your vitality may not be optimum. Can pick up when Mars switches into Leo on the 4th of November and be pretty good through to the 6th of January, but it is going retrograde from the 6th of December. So anything you try when Mars moves into your sign could go through some frustrating obstacles, and it may not be until the 18th of April that you can really get back on the front foot. So what I would say is that don't be surprised if someone from your past reappears in your life. It doesn't have to be a romantic person. It could be someone you used to work with, someone quite influential. It may be someone who wants to work with you again, or it could be old skills and talents that you've had can be repurposed, or you can start to plan a new beginning, which may require quite a lot of deep research. But if you are someone who's usually quite bubbly and outgoing, there just could be some times when you want more peace and quiet. And you may find that your moods are strangely up and down. If you can just anticipate all of this, but also understand what's happening, it will help you to deal with the process that much more. So essentially, Mars in the 12th house. Mars is known as the lesser malefic, so it's not necessarily an easy influence. It's also in its full in the sign of Cancer, so not its best location. But for you, this is pushing you really to stop, pause and reflect on maybe some sensitive issues and angers that may be stored right down deep within you. And if you can embrace these, look at them in the face and let them go and release them, that's going to be a very therapeutic process for you. So Virgo, you're in for a very exciting time, because Mars can be about our ego and individuality, but in the 11th house, as it is for you, it's where we're able to maintain our individuality, but also work in a collegiate way with others, so cooperate and collaborate. So you've got a great chance to boost your social situation through till the 18th of April next year. It is true that when Mars moves into Leo on the 4th of November through to the 6th of January, you may find yourself a bit more muted in this regard, and even think about some of the people that you can't quite rely upon quite as much. But there's every opportunity that some kind of network or team situation or group dynamic is where you can really flourish. But equally, Mars in the 11th house can give you a lot of extra motivation and desire to work towards a long-term plan that really excites you. Libra, you could be about to crush one of the archetypes of your sign, that you're ultimately a people pleaser. With Mars moving right to the top of your solar chart for 23 of the next 32 weeks through to the 18th of April next year, and when it does move into Leo, it's in the part of your chart to do with how you can network. If you really want to raise your profile, you want to identify your goals and ambitions, and you want to pursue them with conviction, confidence and self-assurance, you've got a fabulous opportunity to do so. What's not to like? Well, it is true that the moon and your ruler Venus are in your sign as Mars takes occupation in your sector of success. So there may be a little bit of a juggle between what you need at a personal level and fitting in with the expectations or the structure of perhaps an organisation that you may work for or want to work with. But if you are someone who has your own enterprise, this is certainly an excellent platform for you to shine. And as ever, it may require some sacrifices, but what you can do very successfully during this period of time is amplify the qualities that you have. Other people are going to become much more aware of what you've got to offer. So Scorpio, even if you're someone who has a preference for quite a steady, perhaps home-orientated life, you may surprise yourself through to the 18th of April next year by trying something completely different, and the desire to do it could be quite spontaneous, like for example making a decision to go on a long haul holiday to somewhere completely different that perhaps sees you escaping your comfort zone, but also really feeling very stimulated in the process. But you can also use this energy of change to think about your role in life as well. So it can be about your professional situation that you may decide to shake up, because from the 4th of November through to the 6th of January next year, there is a platform for you to reach for the stars. But it may require you to be more flexible, try something in a different and fresh way, learn some new skills, perhaps even go on a training course. But if you are someone with a passion for action, adventure and independence, this is going to be a thrilling period of time for you. And if you are someone, as I mentioned, who's used to a much more protected way of living, you may surprise yourself by bringing out your inner daredevil. So Sagittarius, I mentioned in my introduction that Mars rules two signs. Aries, very much about direct action, but its rulership of Scorpio is much more intense, a deeper moving energy, and the move of Mars into Cancer for you is much more redolent of that. So if you are wanting at a more psychological level to really get deeper into what makes you tick, what a fabulous opportunity for you. Of course, Mars is also going to move into your 9th house through your sister fire sign of Leo, and there could be a link, because if you're expanding your understanding, that extra knowledge you can glean, something you often have a passion for, can be just absolutely perfect. But Mars in the 8th house can be about neat desire, and in some ways about instant gratification. The sign of Cancer is about how we feel, so it's very, very sensitive. But there is a simpatico, because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, and obviously that's a water sign, and Cancer is too. So the watery part of life, how we feel about things, especially deeper feelings, is going to be very evocative for you, particularly during this period of time. But if you are wanting to do better financially and use your resources more shrewdly, and even consider a more entrepreneurial approach, what a great chance you have. But if your attention is more towards relationships, if there is somebody that you're involved with, it could get much hotter in terms of the personal connection between you. But equally, if you're single, you may want some kind of challenge if you meet someone. You may not necessarily want someone that you can just easily get along with. You may want to experience some kind of moving transformation through the connection with them. Capricorn, it's all about relationships, but Mars in the 7th house is complex. People who have Mars in the 7th house of their natal charts can be very assertive in relationships, but that makes it more difficult to find that sweet spot between what we need as an individual and what the other person we're collaborating with needs. But then if you are someone who tends to be pretty easygoing and someone has been taking you for granted in a way which is just not acceptable, through to the 18th of April next year, you're going to demonstrate a much greater ability to mark out your boundaries, and that can be a good thing. Equally, if you're someone who really enjoys some kind of combative sport, whether it's tennis, badminton, squash, because that's up against a direct opponent, Mars in the 7th house can really capture your imagination. But Mars in the 7th house is always also a good place to check out where we're up to in terms of our endurance. So you may want to be more mindful of some kind of health app. But the 7th house generally is how we connect. And if you are someone who would like to have someone closely connected to you, you would like to forge a very positive relationship through to next April the 18th, your desire to make that happen is certainly going to be upped. But if there are any relationships in your world, whatever your status, which are not working so sweetly, particularly if you don't feel particularly respected, the other person could be in for a surprise about how much feistier you're set to be. Aquarius, the great thing about having Mars in your 6th house is it is going to give you an extra amount of stamina. And stamina is important these days. Life can be demanding. The 6th house can be about all of life's practicalities. So whether it is around your health routines or around work, you're just going to have a little bit more endurance to bear the stresses and strains that do occur. But the 6th house can also be a little bit perfectionist. And maybe if something isn't quite as you want it through to the 18th of April, even when Mars goes into your 7th house of relating, it could make you perhaps a bit picky, but also affected more emotionally. But Mars in the 6th house is also about work. And if you do want to change your role because it's not giving you the level of personal satisfaction you'd really like, this can be a great chance to go on the front foot to get what you need. Now, the 6th house can also be around pets. If you are someone who enjoys a pet in your life, your interaction with them can prove to be very stimulating and positive. You can also find yourself connecting more with people that you perhaps work with, colleagues, not necessarily socially, but just having a much greater and more direct connection to them, which can enliven the day as you make your way through your role. So Pisces, for you, Mars moving into your sister water sign of Cancer is marvellous. Going to be there, apart from the time it makes its way through Leo, your 6th house of practicalities, from the 4th of November through to the 6th of January. But it gives you a chance to really start to feel a lot more attractive and alluring. So if you have felt, particularly with Mars in your 4th house, a little bit sort of affected by the humdrum parts of life, particularly the domestic cycle, the needs of your partner or your children, or just in terms of your own emotions have felt a little bit oppressed, Mars moving into the 5th house can ignite your passion. Sometimes it's important to have neat fun. So you have a great window of opportunity to be more social, more interactive, to engage with other people, but most of all, express your ideas, your flair, your creativity, and give yourself permission to have some fun. It's been a real pleasure being with you, working through this Mars in Cancer special. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great 23 weeks of the next 32. Take care and goodbye.